former Governor Cuomo is running for mayor of New York City, which has critics asking if he's cured his Italian problem. With new car manufacturing standards, why some rappers are traveling with their own airbags. Next, fears that auditing the gold at Fort Knox might uncover a Jew tunnel. We take a look at the Colombian transgender opera U.S. taxpayers spent $47,000 on. A-holes where there should be a hole, a hole. Oh, I've been stuck as a little boy. Are Mississippi lawmakers trying to take away your right to masturbate? Usually as a newsman, I try and stay neutral, just provide the coverage. But today, I stand up for the masturbators of this great nation. Of America and proclaim all semen should be free. For if we are going to live in a land where a man can only blow loads in his lover's assholes, who other than the gays can abide by such rules? A dark day for America.
It's your daily dose of misinformation, pulled from a lightly hemorrhoided asshole. It's today's Run Your Mouth!
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Run Your Mouth podcast. First and foremost, we have an entirely new studio setup and spent a bunch of yesterday on Adderall making people record episodes that will never go out into the world. So you guys can let me know if this actually sounds good, if I am coming through clearly. I think we're going to have a nice, robust bassness in my voice. I think moving forward, people are going to wonder why I sound so incredibly smooth. And, you know, I don't even need to go to the gym anymore because what I did is I called up the Jews at B&H and I said, give me the biggest dildo that you have of a microphone. Find me something that would be on a black man that appears in porn. And this thing is like a brick. This is like 3 pounds of compression technology all in one microphone. So I think if we got me like a band and we saw how many steps I took, I think you're going to see me trading hands more often because I need a rest, and I will never have to work on arms again because I'm holding this giant brick. Also, if anyone out there has the funds and they want to stage the entire trans opera, I'll write the whole thing. I'll get a musical director. You think that was the only lick that I had in me? Let me tell you, when that wig and makeup comes on, now I see why people were identifying as genders other than their own. I took on a whole new persona. Let me tell you, I'm not an actor. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but that one felt right. You know, sometimes you just step into a part and you know that you're made for it. And playing a man that identifies as a female that also happens to live in Colombia, took a lot of cocaine, and now is really good at opera is definitely something that I could do. So if someone out there has the budget, maybe YoKratom.com. Maybe this is the year for YoKratom.com where they make so much money that they call me up and they say, hey, I've got $400,000 for you to stage an off-Broadway production of the Colombian, and you got to do it big, like it was actually the Colombian musical, and now it's coming to the United States of America. All right, let's change topic here, because I want to throw this out there. Did I miss out on gold? Are they going to audit Fort Knox and find out that there's absolutely nothing there? Because years ago, you know, I was a gold bug kind of character. Well, why am I holding on to this paper currency? And I wanted to buy gold, and someone's like, no, you got to get the gold mines. And then I bought some of the gold mines, and then no matter how much gold goes up, my gold mines just keep going down. I don't know. As a decent libertarian, I'm going to come clean with you guys and go, I've put all of my money into studio equipment that doesn't work. So at the moment, not only do I not have gold, I don't own a gun either. I'm a decent shot at this point, and I know where the bullets are. I'm not going to tell you guys how I know where the bullets are. Shout out PhoenixAmmo.com, but I happen to be in Connecticut, and I know where the bullets are if you're in Connecticut. Anyways, but now that they're auditing Gold Knox, are they going to finally kick open that door? What kind of scramble is going on behind the scenes? They had to take the team that was trying to clean up the JFK shooting scandals. They got these minions, the government cleanup squad. Oh my God, are they having a busy week? They've been running around. They're trying to get the files ready for release. They got $4 trillion that are missing that I have to pretend like they didn't just go to themselves in the Cayman Islands. They're running around in circles. And now the newest thing, and this is smart of DOGE and Elon Musk, of how busy he's going to keep these individuals, keeping them running circles so that they can't hide everything all the time. But when they kick open that door at Fort Knox, and they find out that there's no gold in there, what does gold get repriced at? Because what happens if we find out that there's just been endless transactions of the government selling gold? No one's buying the gold. I guess they're just selling it to themselves to pretend like there's more sellers on the open market than there actually were. Every once in a while, they fucked up and they actually did. Someone executed the trade before them and they didn't sell it to themselves. So someone actually took delivery on the physical gold. There was that story with those, I think the Hunt brothers or something, that tried cornering the silver market until the government shut them down. That's the last thing the government wants, is for people to realize how valuable physical commodities are against gold. What's going to do I wish I owned some gold right now? Or do you think they're rushing it all over? Do you think they're working it out? They're making peace with Russia and slowly buying it back from the Chinese so that they can shove it into that room? Or, how good of an audit is that going to be? Did Elon Musk buy a whole bunch of gold before this thing, and this is how he's actually going to get paid off? Is he's going to open up the doors at Fort Knox. There's going to be nothing there except for a dead Jewish guy. And then who got stuck in a rat trap, it was like a glue floor. There's going to be a couple Hasidic people that got stuck to the floor of Fort Knox and an empty pallet of gold. And then all of a sudden, all the gold that Elon Musk sold is going to go up to the moon. Speaking of things that I feel like I've missed out on, and I don't want to miss out on, is I'm sure you guys all saw it. I mean, America is back as a country, and hockey's really stepping it up, letting people know how great of a sport it is. But out in Canada, I'm sure you guys all saw it. I mean, I didn't even really watch it, but I just, headlines. Those stupid Canadians booed our national anthem, and then the American hockey team said, well, then fuck me, fight me, bitch. They didn't say fuck me, bitch. I mean, that'd be funny on the ice. There's a lot of layers that you have to take off. That'd be difficult. You'd have to have some real flexibility and some real hip strength. You really have to have spent some time in gay clubs, taking it in weird positions, or in prison, because there's nothing to support yourself. I mean, I guess the boards, but they didn't say fuck me. They said fight me, bitch. And then they fought the Canadians 3 times in a row. And tell me that didn't feel like a great American moment. And this is what makes me think I got to start getting on the steroids, because, for a long time, my generation was busy talking about trauma, and everyone was celebrating their anxiety. Everyone was celebrating their depression. And now all of a sudden, are we going back to old school America? Is everyone going to be on steroids going, fight me, bitch? Because I don't want to fall behind. I don't want to be the one guy who didn't have gold when everyone else is getting shredded and just getting into fights. I can't let these Gen Z workaholic people who don't drink alcohol for some reason and only smoke weed get ahead of me, because I'm behind. I mean, I'm ahead in years, but you get what I'm saying. All right, last random stuff, and then we've got so much to cover. We're going to get into a little bit backwards today, because we're going to do all the nonsense topics at the end, and I will take some comments. It's going nuts in the chat right now. People are all enthusiastic about my giant microphone. The internet's found out that Run Your Mouth now has excellent sound until we play videos and you guys tell me that they're not working, but they should be working. I left here depressed after the last episode and said, I'm working too hard on these things to have anything other than perfect sound quality. And then I called up the people at B&H and I said, get me the largest microphone that I can possibly hold in my hand. And they said, how much are you jerking off? Because this is going to take some real wrist and hand strength. And I said, don't you worry. I've prepared for this moment. I've been doing pull-ups, and I got the grip strength for your biggest microphone that you guys have. I can handle this. And they said, all right, but you're going to have to sign a waiver if you're not actually going to just hold the thing in your hand. Anyways, let's get back to focused. Last quick random topic. Then we're going to get into Ukraine. Then we're going to get into DOGE, then a bunch of random stuff, and then we've got crowd health coming on. I'm wondering if we're looking at the real death blows to legacy media. You know, USAID, they're out there, they're cleaning up the mess. They're getting some of the funds that were just flowing to these organizations out. But aside from that, they're starting to lose their access. You've got, was it NPR or was it the AP News that refused to call it the Gulf of America, which I'll be honest, it's stupid. What are we going to rename New Mexico? This was never Mexico. It's very much so America. Go Trump. Who cares? The thing was always called the Gulf of Mexico. Are we just going to keep labeling things more America? Even more America? I claim this too. It's not the South Pole. It's south of America, north of something else. It's just, it seems like some real Donald Trump nonsense. He's like, what's the low-hanging fruit? Because Russia just won this Ukraine war, and I don't want to have to actually go invade places to throw up our flag on it and claim it for ourselves. So, and they are like, well, you can just claim the ocean as the Gulf of America. He goes, fine, I'll do that. And then one of the news organizations goes, we're not going to do it. And they go, all right, well, then you ain't allowed no access. Fight me, bitch. And so they threw him out. And then everyone goes, hey, you can't be doing that. That's not freedom of speech. And here's the thing about that. Freedom of speech means you can say whatever the fuck you want, and the government can't tell you otherwise, and they can't they can't shut you down. They can't get you in trouble for it. They can't weight down your information. But not giving you access, listen, it might not be ideal. Maybe there should be free access, and I should be allowed to interview the president just the same as NBC News was able to get access to Joe Biden. But they don't have to give you access. And the whole game was that they were trading favorable, good access for favorable coverage. And like I've covered in other episodes, new circle jerks are forming. And so here's what's interesting. If legacy media loses their access, then what are they going to do? They're going to become just political commentators where they're commentating on what the podcasts who have the better access are doing now. Then they lose their entire prestige. If they end up losing some of their government funding, then there's less money in it, and they don't get to pretend like they're making all the money because everyone likes their product more. And then if RFK Jr. actually takes away their advertising dollars because every single pharmaceutical company can't just write them endless checks to pitch their vaccines, I wonder if we're coming to the real end of legacy media. And who knows? Maybe these $4 trillion that DOGE has uncovered going to nowhere are just stockpiled so that, while the government saves no money, maybe all these people that were plundering the United States government, they've been saving money. They realize it might come to a time where the government wasn't just sending them free checks. So they actually had a rainy day fund while they were taking all of our money. So maybe these organizations can keep going. But I feel like we might be coming to the end of traditional media. And lucky for us, we've got the biggest microphone in the game. I might go back in a month after I've really worked out and held this thing for long enough and said, B&H, I'm ready for an even bigger microphone. You think that microphone was too big for me to? We're going to have like an anvil. Next episode, I'm going to be holding a full-sized anvil. All right, let's take some comments. We've got CJ Trickstar. Is that a red extension cord plugged into that microphone? No, it was the cord from your mom's vibrator. That wasn't necessary. You were just, no, it's a red, high fidelity, highest quality. I said, give me your highest quality cord for your heaviest microphone, and that's what they sent. Spike, except you get a lot of my mouth on it. We'll have to work on that. Spike, oh no, he said a no-no word. What was the no-no word? I don't think I said a no-no word. Runaway Slav. Nobody cared when Turkey renamed themselves or Kiev changed their spelling. Gulf of America rules. Mexico is Zog Nation in a civil war with the Jew Prez after 39 murders. All right, fair enough. John Winschlacher, fake super chat. Who would you trust less as your pilot? Chris Christie with a bunch of food as his co-pilot, or two female pilots? I'd go two female pilots over Chris Christie eating. Those are going to be slippery hands. That's not going to work out well. Rob, I meant not to top gay slip. Fair enough. All right, let's take one more and then let's move on. You keep all the best top secret stuff at the world famous secret base. All right, let's get into the episode. We do have a lot to cover, and let's start with the Great European Bitch Out, brought to you by YoKratom.com, home of the $60 kilo. And firstly, is you've got all the European leaders. They're getting together. European leaders want a say in talks to end Russia's war in Ukraine. The U.S. is brushing them off. And here you have them sitting around a nice little table in their fancy room. And this is basically like when you did Model UN as a kid. If you ever did Model UN as a kid, I think freshman year, I tried to do it, made it as an alternate, didn't go, and then never did anything in school ever again. But there you have it. That's like Model UN. I mean, even the UN, I don't know what the UN does. They every once in a while, the Arab nations get together, condemn Israel, and then nothing happens. And so, your Model UN is just showcasing, hey, can I also say random horse shit that nobody cares about and pretend like I'm more articulate and better than you are and make accusations and all this stuff. And so now you get the actual world leaders basically engaging in the Model UN of getting together and just begging Trump of, can you just say you incorporated some of our ideas? We'll put a couple ideas forward, and can you just pretend like we're somewhat important? And I like what Trump's doing here because of all the talk of, hey, we have to display strength. We have to display strength because if we don't display strength, every other nation will realize that we're weak. And so this displays strength. We're bitching out all of Europe. We're telling them, we don't need you. We don't care about your opinions. We'll get things done without you. Nothing that you guys say. You can go play dress up and have meetings so that you can feel a little bit better about yourselves. But guess what? We don't need you guys in order to get these things done. And you have no real power and we don't care. And so then you've got the head of the UK, who looks like Andy Daly. I've never even heard of this person. I guess they keep flipping their leaders a whole bunch. The only one I knew was Boris Johnson because he looked the most ridiculous. UK Starmer, I'm ready to put British troops in Ukraine. And so here he is. He's stepping in. He wants to go, listen, if the U.S. is going to walk away from this thing, I'm willing to actually put troops on the ground because we need to keep this Ukraine war going. And two things. Firstly, it's like, good luck with this. Talk about the high school cool kids table really shaking up where the hottest girl from the table goes, yeah, I'm going to go hang out with those people. They're like, no, we got, and then what are you going to do if the U.S. starts trading with Russia and China? And then they turn around and they go, hey, we want to get along with Iran too. And then all of a sudden Europe's standing over there and the UK's got their soldiers. No, but we think Russia's really mean. You're just going to be left out from the party. Good luck with this one. The UK is trying to stand up and go, we can't possibly abandon the good people of the Ukraine. I mean, after all, they were going to close out this whole shenanigans, and then we sent Boris Johnson, and we kept him in on this mess. So now is no time to actually admit that this was a huge mistake. We need to double down and make sure that more Ukrainians die for absolutely no reason, because admitting to the truth of the situation is acknowledging defeat. And remember, the Ponzi scheme is only over once someone lets people know that there's no money left. But until we actually have to make the adjustment on the Ponzi scheme, we can continue to party. So why are you going to end the party and actually confront reality? That's what the UK is up here doing. The UK is up there going, there's no reason to confront reality here. We can keep this Ponzi scheme going. I mean, if you're going to start confronting reality here, what's the next thing you're going to do? We're going to find out that there's none of the gold in the world, and then we're going to find out that governments just can't honestly print money. And then the next thing you know, I'm not running all this money that I get to just steal for myself and my relatives. And so there you have it. He wants to go, listen, fine, the U.S. is going to abandon ship. We're not going to abandon ship. And so, while he's talking a big game, let's hear what he actually has to say. And hopefully the sound works and doesn't double back. Let me know. Let me know if we're good on sound. Here we go.
We're all waiting. Europe must play its role. And I'm prepared to consider committing British forces on the ground.
It's already quite a backup. I'm prepared to consider committing. That's quite the walk back right there. From the headline of, no, we'll step it up to, I will consider.
Alongside others, if there is a lasting peace agreement. But there must be a US backstop.
Oh, so in other words, you're not actually trying to do anything, and you acknowledge that what you say or do has absolutely no impact. But it's fun to get up with the piece of paper. You get together with all the other European leaders. You play dress up. You pretend like you're important too. Let's continue.
Because a US security guarantee is the only way to effectively deter Russia from attacking Ukraine again.
So, if the only thing that matters here is what the U.S. does, why do we have to include you in the conversation? It's just all these people trying to keep us spending our money and putting us on the line. Yeah, so good. You guys blew peace the last time when you sent Boris Johnson over there. Why would we include you in these peace talks again for you guys just to convince us to spend more of our money on you? Here, let's replay that. Guy talks a big game for him just to get up and go, well, this really comes down to the U.S. But we want to be included in this conversation because as the unelected people from foreign governments, we should have a say in how the U.S. spends its money.
Europe must play its role.
There really are just a bunch of girlfriends that have just gotten their credit cards cut off because they were spending too much money.
And I'm prepared to consider committing British forces on the ground alongside others if there is a lasting peace agreement. But there must be a...
And then here's their latest spin. Their latest nonsense is that, sure, and I'll read the headline for all the just listeners out there. No durable peace in Ukraine if Europe not in talks minister, which that doesn't even read like proper English. It's like Yoda talk there. But anyways, from the New York Times, best writers in the whole world, huh, guys? So there you go. Not a durable peace. So even if Donald Trump manages to get peace done, just remember, because we weren't involved, that might actually not be durable. And the same as we said that, Putin was going to take over all of Russia, you can just trust us that even if it looks like everyone's getting along now, it's not actually going to be, it's not going to last because I wasn't involved. So just know that that's a fictional peace until they come back to us. And then, me, it's like a marriage counselor that just wants her money. I saw this published on Mish Talk, and I thought that this was great. 11 questions that Donald Trump sent to these European leaders. These European leaders, they want to be involved in a durable peace. They don't want Donald Trump just out there making all the decisions and getting it done. And if I've ever just seen a nonsense homework assignment that will not be considered, this is a nice part of the Donald Trump bitch out where he sent them a list of questions, and these are good questions. If you wanted a seat at the table for someone to be considering what you were bringing to the table in the peace negotiations, these would be good questions to answer. And there's nothing better than a bitch out of, I've had this before. I used to sell marketing stuff. And if you ever got people who would not want to take a phone call and they would send you lists of questions, they're just asking you to do homework for absolutely no reason, and they're never going to consider your proposal. There you go. Sales tip for you. If someone doesn't want to take your phone call and they've got an application, a questionnaire, this or that or other paperwork, that's just a bad way to get rid of you. There was once I got stiffed on a gig, and they told me I had to send in an invoice, and I was like, this is $500, just hand me, we need an invoice to process it. I don't understand why they needed the invoice. So I created a invoice that said, just, what is this? The money that you owe me. How much? The $500 we agreed upon. Like, I just filled out a general format because it was nonsense they were at, and guess what? Those people didn't pay me. And that's the way that people are. If people don't want to, instead of just being honest sometimes and being like, yeah, I don't want to work with you, people will give you paperwork and drag things on to end up at the exact same place of just ignoring you. And I hope Europe sits down and actually performs this paperwork, because if I've ever seen nonsense paperwork that will never be looked at and is just bitching someone out where they're going to have to sit down like they're in detention and fill it out, that's this list of questions. But they're fair questions. Let's give it a read. 11 questions. What do you view as Europe-backed security guarantee or assurance that would serve as sufficient deterrent to Russia while also ensuring this conflict ends with an enduring peace settlement? In other words, if we're going to bring you to the table, you got any ideas here? Are you guys actually putting anything up? Which European and or third countries do you believe could or would participate in such an arrangement? The answer is none of them. They just want the U.S. to chip in. Are there any countries you believe would be indispensable? Yes, the U.S. Would your country be willing to deploy its troops to Ukraine as part of a peace settlement? As you just heard from the UK, is if their troops can stand behind the American troops, they'd be happy to. And that's only after there was already peace there, so they didn't have to actually risk anything. If a third country's military forces were able to be deployed to Ukraine, as part of a peace arrangement, what would you consider to be necessary size of such European-led forces? All fair and good questions that I assume will not get answered. And now we've got Zelensky, and Zelensky's piping in and saying, obviously, I need to be included in these conversations, because if I'm not included in these conversations, then they're meaningless, which if the U.S. pulls its support and they work out a peace agreement with Putin, what position are you going to be in to go, no, without the American support, we're going to continue to lose lives? And then you really think that these bitch boys in Europe are going to show up with troops and they're actually going to send their money? If we permanently pull our support and we work out a deal with Putin and go, hey, it's over, here's the deal, you lost these territories, we're sorry that Biden fucked you over, he was a dementia idiot, and maybe you guys shouldn't have covered for him. I mean, what position is Zelensky actually going to be in to go, nope, we're keeping this war going? And before we see Donald Trump's response, where he absolutely smacks down Zelensky, let's listen to Zelensky talk about how there cannot actually be a peace talks without the Ukrainians. Let's give it a listen.
I mean, this is up to them, but they can discuss everything they want, but not about Ukraine without us. And that's why in this case, especially in this case, I think it's a little bit dangerous. That's why I said that we need to talk more with the president and to talk more with his people, with his teams.
There
Yesterday,
you go.
as
we
you
can't
said,
have peace without their involvement. And now let's watch the greatest SmackDown of all time. Roll the tape, producer man. Here's Donald Trump.
We're hearing that Russia wants to force Ukraine to hold new elections in order to sign any kind of a peace deal. Is that something that the U.S. would ever support?
Well, we have a situation where we haven't had elections in Ukraine, where we have martial law, or essentially martial law in Ukraine, where the leader in Ukraine, I mean, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating, and where a country has been blown to smithereens. You got most of the cities are laying on their sides. The buildings are collapsing.
You know, Russia was saying this one, and that is harsh when you're hearing it from the United States government of why would we include Zelensky in any sort of peace negotiations as the representative of Ukraine? He's not the legitimate leader. He declared martial law. He's essentially a dictator, and he's got 4% approval rating. So, you know what? We're just going to negotiate a peace settlement, and then you guys can vote on a new president because that guy's just looking to keep you in a war. And sadly, he was bought off by the Bidens, and he probably took his piece of the pie. And have you seen a bitch out ever like that of, no, we don't need to include you in this because actually the United States government does not recognize you as the true leader of Ukraine because you declared martial law. Let's continue.
It looks like a massive...
Accurate from Lady Snowblood that he also said you had 3 years to make peace and didn't do it.
A demolition site. The whole... I mean, so many of the cities. I mean, they haven't done it in Kiev because I guess they don't want to shoot too many rockets in there. They've done it 20%, but they haven't done it 100%. If they wanted to do it 100%, it would probably happen very quickly. But you have cities that are absolutely decimated. And yeah, I would say that.
And so, of course, Zelensky responds in the only way he can. And he says, Zelensky says Trump lives in a disinformation space of Russian propaganda. And it's kind of hard to play the those are Russian talking points when they're coming from the president of the United States of America. You know, the thing about the Russian talking points is that a lot of them were true. And if you repeated them, then the way that people would discredit you is by going, that was just a Russian talking point. And you could go, well, was it true and honest information? Yeah, but a Russian talking point. Kind of like the Biden laptop has all the earmarks of a Russian information or whatever the Russian, I forgot the terms that they were using. But that's the thing with Russian talking points is that sometimes they're true. And I guess when you're in cahoots with the Biden administration, you're engaging in tech censorship, you can try and discredit people such as myself and go, well, those are just Russian talking points. Sure, they're accurate and true, but Russian talking points. That excuse doesn't really work with the truth when the United States government is also acknowledging it to be true. That little sneaky trick of stating the truth and then people dismissing it by going, well, you can't say that. That's just a Russian talking point. Doesn't work when it's also the officially acknowledged position of the United States government. All right, and then just to close out the latest from the Ukraine war, which it does seem like Donald Trump is pushing for the end for. So you've got Marco Rubio sat down with the Russians. He sat down with the Saudi Arabians. Of course, his first words were, "Hey, Lucy," which you can bet that I'll make that joke 45 times until he gets kicked out of the administration. And yes, he will turn more into Martin Cheech as we go. But my guess is the way that this really goes down is that at some point, Marco Rubio, he's a placeholder early on in these little talks, and they get their pictures, and, they get everyone worked up. They let Russia know that they have no involvement, and they little inch forward. And then at some point, Donald Trump finally just sits down and goes, all right, what do we have to price oil at for this to work for everybody? What do we got to do? Let's make a deal. Putin, are you good with it at $90 a barrel? You guys are good? My oil companies are good. We're going to keep it there. At some point, the big boys are just going to get into a room and go, all right, what does everyone here need? All right, listen, Putin, you can keep all his territories, but I need a contract that we get some of those precious minerals so that I don't look like a bitch. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to. All right, and that closes out our first segment. Thank you to another one of our sponsors, PhoenixAmmo.com, because wars are terrible. And, the United States government, I was once listening to this piece by Ron Johnson, that partly why we can't beat the Russians in war is because they're able to produce bullets for so much cheaper than we do because of our military industrial complex that overcharges for everything. But you know who doesn't overcharge is PhoenixAmmo.com, because they don't even sell bullets to the government. If you're in the government and you want to buy some bullets at cheaper prices, you got to go through the military industrial complex, and they keep popping up those prices artificially so that they can be running some profits. But Phoenix Ammo, they ain't pulling that racket. You go to PhoenixAmmo.com, you can pick up whatever you need at great prices, and know that you aren't supporting the war machine, which is good. You go to other companies, you might be supporting the evil racket continuing and overpaying for bullets for absolutely no reason. All right, let's take a couple of comments here. Let's see what's going on. Junior, I want those bioweapon labs. Spike, I don't think they're going to believe my story about Bruce Willis killing him with the samurai sword. Meatballs, their whole argument hinges on Trump being a Russian asset. All right, one more comment. The Damon aliens from Zeta Rectum are going to have my bird for his homunculus got out. I don't know what the hell that was. I don't even know if that was English. All right, now let's get into the DOGE reactions. First is, this came across, I like to say my desk, like I have a physical desk, but this was in the New York Post. More than $151 million collected from U.S. Army soldiers for food ended up spent elsewhere report. And the storyline here is apparently they charge soldiers for foods on base, and then they found out that a lot of the money they were taking out of their paychecks wasn't going to food. And I realized, for a while, everything we were hearing about government being able to monitor our activities, which I'm still concerned with. I don't like that when I go to the airport, they're scanning my faces now. I don't like the ability to be tracked. I don't like how they can have all this information on us. I don't like how everything's digitalized, blah, 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 blah. But one of the interesting storylines about all these cameras is that there's cameras on the police all the time, and so they can't get away with some of the things that they used to get away with. And what's interesting about the AI is that while you would have thought it was just going to be implemented by the IRS so that anything that you didn't file, they would bust you for, it seems like it might actually be an ability to track what the government and what the government is up to, which is kind of a promising storyline of if we actually are able to rid all of the fraud out of government. And now we're at the beginning of this DOGE thing, and I don't have a full picture on it, but it does feel like what's coming out of the media and from the Democrats who are so upset about the locating of fraud and abuse in government and that Elon Musk has access to all this information. Suddenly, they're very concerned with data collection. They weren't concerned that government was acquiring all this data. They weren't concerned that government had all this data. But then suddenly Donald Trump appoints somebody with the security clearance that's a part of the DOGE team that is going to have access to data. And now all of a sudden, this is a giant problem. We're not going to discuss any of the other ways that government's accumulating this data, what companies get to accumulate this data on you, who sells it to the government, who buys it from the government, all the other tech companies that have giant contracts. I think Amazon lost one to Microsoft for the cloud software for all of the government storage of data and stuff. For some reason, there's never going to be a news story about any of that. But the second you got somebody who is assigned by the president who's cleaning up the mess and looking into the fraud and the abuse, we've got a total and complete freak out. And now one of the things that's kind of incredible is one of the big lines is that Congress is supposed to decide where the money is spent. And so if Congress designated money to these agencies, only Congress should be able to rescind the money from these agencies. If Congress gave the money to USAID, then only Congress can take away the money from USAID. And the thing is, but like, shouldn't Congress actually have to say where the money goes to? It's the I think I talked about this on Part of the Problem. It's like that EPA rule that they would just kind of assign all these functions to the EPA, and then that turned out that that's not the way it's supposed to go. Congress is actually supposed to write these laws. They can't just designate the laws to these agencies to go write them. Maybe it should be the same thing with funding. Funding shouldn't just be designated, hey, we're giving $25 billion to this agency, and then they'll figure out how the money's being spent. And so, like, let's say, for example, Congress created the government cheese store, and the government cheese store is supposed to have fine cheeses for less money. And then Elon Musk comes in, he finds out that all this money is actually being spent on running kids into basements. And so he goes, we can't spend any of that money on running the kids into the basement. Would you then go, well, only Congress can shut down the cheese store? Well, they're not operating as a cheese store. They're operating as a pedophile basement ring. And so the big complaint is that, one, the authority to take back these funds should be in the hands of Congress, which sounds like a giant lie because Congress didn't actually appropriate funds for specific activities. Like Congress did not appropriate or decide that we were going to specifically spend funds for a Colombian transgender opera. They just gave the funds over to USAID. So it sounds like we're already not in the proper format of the way that the money's supposed to be allocated. All right, let's take a look at some of the other complaints and lies against against what DOGE is doing. And once again, it's still early into DOGE. I don't always think Elon Musk is the most honest of people, and so we'll see how it all plays out. But from my first looks in the first couple or weeks of it existing, is that the media is just clawing at bullshit, unable to even figure out how to spin this story of as to why having this organization uprooting fraud and reckless government spending, they're having a hard time selling as to why that is against the will of the American people or why it's a danger. And then it's incredible because you have Elon Musk saying, we're not coming for your entitlements. You've got Donald Trump saying all that this guy can do is find things and slash things and make the recommendations to slash things. And they're finding actual fraud. And then the media is telling you, well, what they're really trying to do is destroy the government from the inside. And what they're really trying to do is take your entitlement programs. I mean, sure, they haven't done any of those things, but that's what they're really trying to do. All right. And now here was one of the most insane claims. This is from The Independent. DOGE claims it found $4.7 trillion in treasury payments that are untraceable. And now here's the thing. When they say untraceable, it sounds like they were being lazy and just spending money without, I guess, saying where the money's going to. It's a little bit like when they were claiming that there were 300,000 missing kids, which makes it sound like there's 300,000 immigrants that came into our country that ended up in basements. That's not what it means. It means there's 300,000 kids that didn't report to their hearings. So $4.7 trillion that was not processed correctly doesn't necessarily mean that it was all stolen, but it does definitely mean that there was the ability to steal a lot of money. And it does sound to me like we should probably get some more forensic investigators on the case to figure out where all this money was going to. I mean, it certainly seems like a good indication of fraud if there's $4.7 trillion treasury payments that are untraceable. And then here's a good way of selling this. You know, Elon Musk, he's good at the PR stuff. So he's claiming, and this is from the Daily Wire, Elon Musk considers DOGE dividend that would send $5,000 checks to all Americans following massive budget cuts. And so here was the money. Here was the number. For every dollar that they save, they will send 20% back to the U.S. taxpayers. And that's a good way of winning people over. Because usually the free money comes in by way of entitlement programs, and it's wink, wink, nod, nod. We're going to have to either steal money through inflation of printing more money, or what we're going to have to do is tax people more, or the whole thing's going to go belly up because we need money so that we can pretend to give you things that would be better if we just left it to the free market, like healthcare. We're going to pretend we're going to give you free healthcare, and what we're really going to do is erode the entire structure of the system of how you acquire things while you're ill. And that's why you end up with things like COVID and whatnot. So anyways, I like this. That's a good selling point for Doge is, hey, root for us to uncover fraud, because if we do, we're actually going to return the savings to you guys by checks on your taxes. It's a good way of selling it. You got to give them that. This is, I'm not sure. Let's give it a read. The Department of Government Efficiency said that it found $4.7 trillion in untraceable treasury payments that were missing a critical tracking code. Elon Musk's non-official advisory body, tasked with slashing bureaucracy and reining in federal spending, said the transactions were missing the treasury account symbol, an identification used to classify all transactions of the federal government. Transaction logged using a TAS code are then sent to the Treasury and Office for Management and Budget for reporting to ensure money is spent according to its intended purpose. Well, I mean, $4.7 trillion without a code, which would be your system for I mean, if this turns out to be true, what's that, like 20% of our deficit or 15% of our deficit? And then the people who are in the next branch of government who just get their paychecks, they didn't once think, hey, why don't we go back to them and tell them you got to be putting in the right codes? Otherwise, we got no way of checking this. The Treasury access symbol TAS is an identification code linking a Treasury payment to a budget line item. Doge wrote on Musk's X platform late on Monday. In the federal government, the TAS field was optional for $4.7 trillion in payments and was often left blank, making traceability almost impossible. Which this is like me at my job. If you're telling me it's optional whether or not I'm going to label the money, I just won't label it ever. And then if the next office gets in and goes, yeah, that's supposed to be there, but it's not, and I'm allowed to process it, then sure, they'll just process it also. All right, I've had enough of whatever that article was. All right, now this is a confusing storyline because one of the wild claims that Elon Musk made was that 150-year-old Americans are receiving Social Security. And then at first I was reading the PolitiFact that was trying to discredit this, and it says the explanation for 150-year-olds receiving checks could relate, which is already alarming when they're telling you it could relate to. So is that the explanation or is it not the explanation? I mean, listen, I don't want to sit down and do a bunch of math and pull a spreadsheet and see if the numbers check out. That's not my lane. I'm not good at that kind of thing. We'll have to get Steven, the Wonder Boy scientist, back on here. Maybe he's as good with numbers as he is with science, and he can tell us whether or not this thing's true. But if I was PolitiFact and I was actually writing an article about this, I would either discredit it or credit it. I wouldn't write an article saying, hey, we looked into it, we've got the resources to tell you whether or not something's true or not, and then come back to, well, it could relate to this. Well, then you got a bullshit article here. That's what you're telling me, is that it could, or it could not. And then let's continue. Government databases may code someone as 150-year-olds for a reason peculiar to large and complex Social Security database. Why a 150-year-old figure may exist in the Social Security database, social media commentators came up with one possible explanation. Once again, social media commentators came up with one possible explanation. So is that the explanation? Listen, I don't have a fact-checking team. I don't have a whole media company. I don't get to look into this and make it a binary of yes or no. But how do you write articles that are just unsubstantiated of could, and based on what one random fuck said online, it could be this? Social media commentators came up with one possible explanation for the 150-year age, and experts who have worked closely with the Social Security Administration told PolitiFact that it was plausible. Why is that the extent of the research? You spoke to someone at Social Security, and the explanation is plausible. Why can't anything be a binary of yes or no? And here's how we debunk this claim. Under an international standard called ISO 8601, a missing value for a date code is May 20th, 1875. That sounds stupid. So for some reason, I guess if they don't know someone's age, they just mark them as 150 and process checks. Because that was the date of an international standard-setting conference held in France known as the Convention du Mètre. So that makes sense. If you don't have a date, you go with some random conference that was held in France. And then Elon Musk came back, and now people who were better at this stuff than me. Someone run the math on this. So he came back with the whole thing and said, yes, there are far more eligible Social Security numbers than there are citizens in the USA. I don't know if eligible Social Security numbers means people that were actually paid. I'm going to tell you that this is annoying. If you're Elon Musk and you're as smart as you are, can you tell me as an absolute that there's 150-year-old people who are getting Social Security? And can you tell me the size and scope of the problem? Or are you just because it doesn't help your case to just be tweeting nonsense. And then he came back with this, which sounded like he was spanking them back and going, no, there's clearly fraud and large fraud in the system. But then I read Mish Talk nearly every day, and he came back, DOGE is careless in operation and reckless in reporting, and he was going with the fact that the 150-year-old thing was nonsense. So I'm here to report back. I'm not sure. All right. Anyways, this I am sure about, and that's whatever's in this video is going to be someone saying something stupid. Let's roll the tape.
About USAID, President Trump has said, quote, billions of dollars have been stolen. The whole thing is a fraud.
It's utter nonsense. The most accountable aid agency in the world is USAID. I've written actually widely on this subject.
The most accountable, and it's absolutely false. So it was no money going to random transgender studies where there weren't random professors in Africa making a shit ton of money to teach artwork to people. I mean, you're coming in and you want to say that everything that Elon Musk is saying is an absolute lie. If you're going to say that, can someone bring receipts so that we know who is lying here? Let's play this again.
USAID, President Trump has said, quote, billions of dollars have been stolen. The whole thing is a fraud.
It's utter nonsense. The most accountable aid agency in the world is USAID. I've written actually widely on this subject. 40% of the staff are accountants and lawyers and people trying to make sure no money is stolen.
A lot of appeal to authority. These are the best people in the entire world, so clearly it's done properly. I mean, they might also just be the best at hiding the money and sending themselves money, but appeal to authority. The best in the world are working on this. Our government could have never been a system with fraud and abuse because our government's so great, they would have caught that same fraud and abuse.
Created systems to monitor that. What they did was they went back 20 years to try to find things. If you have to go back 20 years to find abuse, that means there isn't that much abuse.
I mean, I don't know whether or not Elon Musk is lying or this guy's lying, but Elon Musk's claims were not from 20 years ago. They were currently people, 150-year-olds, are receiving Social Security. And in the last couple of years, we've been paying for all sorts of trans nonsense around the globe. And he was like, this is just what we're noticing off the top. So I don't remember that, Elon Musk came and said, hey, I'm looking back 20 years and look at what happened 19 years ago. But hey, this is 60 Minutes. And remember how much trouble Alex Jones got in for when he got the shooting, the school shooting storyline, and the accountability that should exist for when you get storyline. He was held very accountable for getting something wrong. I don't understand how we have such discrepancy in truth here between Elon Musk claims and what we're hearing on 60 Minutes. Let's continue.
USAID spending in 2023 was $38 billion. That's less than 1% of the federal budget.
I also love this one, which is, hey, whatever fraud and abuse that you guys find, just know that that's very small compared to all the fraud and abuse, so why even bother? They can't even give it any credit, and it's also week one. So if you found 1% of the fraud in week one, theoretically, in 100 weeks, you could be done with all of it. But even though in week one, whatever they find, just remember that's small, and it's not even, we shouldn't give any credit for it, nor should we even continue making these improvements because it's just such a small piece of the pie.
Natsios told us there is waste and occasional fraud like any big agency. Think of the Pentagon. But the money, he says, is watched by officials, including those in the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget.
The question is, why did the Congress approve all these contracts and grants and programs all these years? Why did OMB approve them?
I love it. This is the greatest appeal to authority. Everyone listen up.
Why did the State Department, F office, the F office controls all foreign aid spending. Every line item in the USAID budget is approved by 3 different bodies: the F office, OMB, and the Congressional Oversight Committees, of which there are 4. No one caught all these horrible abuses? That's just not believable.
Or that's exactly what happened, and you've got a lot of redundancy in the amount of people that should probably be fired because they're not catching this stuff. All right, let's take a look at one more slide, and then we got our guest coming up. This is the plaintiffs had urged Judge Bates to grant a temporary request to block DOGE's access to the information, which they said would force the agency to implement a more thoughtful process, right? This is the other piece of bullshit, which is, yes, what Donald Trump is doing is good, and it's beneficial results. But if we did it in a different way, it could be more thoughtful. What does that mean? You guys haven't been doing it. You've been in control for what, the last 50, 60 years, and you didn't do it. And now Donald Trump's getting it done. But if we included you, it's the same thing as the European lie of it would be a more durable piece. All right, now we've got a guest coming on with actual insight and information. Hopefully all of our sound is working properly. We're about to find out. Andy, welcome to the show. Can you hear me all right?
Hey, man. How are you?
Excellent. All right, we'll find out from the chat whether or not we got some echoes. We've made some studio improvements here. Andy, I'm getting into the DOGE a little bit here, and the next thing that Elon Musk is claiming he's going to take a look at is Medicaid and elsewhere. And for those that don't know, Andy is the CEO of why don't you let everyone know? I just became a member, and we're going to get me healthy. Why don't you?
Yeah, CEO of Crowd Health, trying to kind of burn down the existing healthcare system and build it up from scratch. So, you know, we kind of consider ourselves the DOGE of if you will, of healthcare. So happy to opine on some of the DOGE stuff going in.
So what do you think he's going to uncover as he starts digging into the medical fraud that exists in this country? People say that it's massive. What do you think is going to be the most blatant that'll uncover right off the bat?
Yeah, well, I think there's one that's public and then one that's not public, and I hope DOGE will take a look at it. The one that's public is that literally trillions of dollars over the last decade have gone to recipients of Medicare outside of the United States. So these are people not even living in the United States who are getting compensated by the U.S. government to pay for their healthcare services, even though they're not even here, which is clearly fraudulent. Medicare only pays for things going on within the United States. So there's some massive fraud that I think is going to be uncovered as DOGE gets into the healthcare side of our budget. And as I think a lot of people know, the healthcare side of our budget is tremendous. It's as large as the defense budget. These have been historically lumped into this group of services, healthcare, Social Security, those types of things, where people would just assume that there was going to be nothing there because these are all entitlements. So you can't change entitlements without a legislative process. And what I think DOGE is starting to find out here is that, no, there are hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars that are being sucked out of some of these entitlement programs that are being compensated to people outside of our country, which is, or dead, as we saw in some of the Social Security numbers.
And I think when it comes to the entitlement program, specifically when it comes to Medicaid and also what's the health care that people get once they retire, once they're Medicare is, that the numbers on that must be just growing astronomically as people live longer and also are less healthy. And you've got more of the baby boomers aging into the eligible to receive that category.
Yeah. Well, just to give you some insight, since 1975, the U.S. population has gone up by about 50%. The number of doctors has gone up by about 150%. The number of administrators in the healthcare system has gone up by 3,200%. And the cost of our healthcare has gone up by 2,500%. Those aren't, adjusted for inflation, but still, those are ridiculous numbers. If our population is going up by 50% and our healthcare costs have gone up by 2,500%. The second part of this, which I think is maybe getting into the weeds here, but what we're seeing, at least on our side on Crowd Health, is that, and this is something I think can help the listener too. If you go into the hospitals will bill you based upon the severity of your ER visit. So it's basically a 1 to 5. 5 is you're about to die. 1 is basically you shouldn't be there. 70% of these bills are coded as very severe, so 4s or 5s. Whereas the studies are showing that 70% of people going into the ER don't have an urgent need. And so what the hospitals are actually billing versus the actual need, there's a massive discrepancy there. And again, there's probably tens of billions of dollars in just that one situation, which is going into the ER. This is called upcoding. It is illegal in Medicare and Medicaid. It is illegal in most states and other commercial plans. So one thing I would just say for people, if you go to the ER, look at that code. And if it ends in a 5 and you're there with a broken finger, you know you're getting screwed.
That's that's a good one. I'd love to hear more of these financial scams. But on that note, I do have a specific question because you were talking about how many more administrators exist in healthcare, and I have a doctor friend, and his wife used to be a practicing doctor, and then she basically moved over to the billing because of difficulty of, I guess from their perspective, putting in codes properly, because sometimes people need more healthcare and it's so frequently rejected by the healthcare company. And it sounds like there's kind of scamming on both sides. You've got doctors who want to maximize their billing, and then you've got the health insurance companies that want to minimize what they have to pay out. And so it sounds like sometimes the healthcare companies are way too aggressive. And one of the big scams I'm hearing about is essentially initially declining all care, so that you have to actually go fight your insurance company that it should be covered, which I think they should be, in my opinion, maybe we can get into this. I think there should be accountability for delayed care if it turns out that they were actually responsible for it. But then there certainly is what you just mentioned of, the doctors getting into the racket. And I think there was a lot of that with COVID, of labeling things as COVID deaths that weren't because there was a financial incentive to do so. What do you see as kind of the biggest breakdown just structurally that keeps driving up costs and seems to make doctors miserable because they got to deal with the insurance companies, and, typical consumers just upset with the whole structure?
Yeah, man, I think the underlying problem here is that you have a different payer than the person who's actually receiving the care. So if we go into the ER or whatever it ends up being, if we have cancer, we're not actually paying for that. And so, I always say that, whoever pays you, whoever pays you is your boss, right? They're
Right.
the one you're working for. And ultimately, these doctors are paid by health insurance companies. And so they have to do what the health insurance companies will pay for. So therefore, if you're not paying for the service, you're actually the product. So we as patients are the product of this system. Everybody is making money off of us. Right. And that's the big challenge with our system. And then therefore, the people who are paying it, who have the most intimate knowledge of what is going on, are the ones who aren't really even a part of the process. I'll give you a perfect example. I last year went into the ER, excuse me, because I was on a similar podcast to this, and I was having trouble putting together sentences. Like I couldn't talk. My ability to talk stopped. So I called 911. Went out here, called 911. I went to the hospital. They found out I was just a migraine. Well, they didn't tell me that until the next morning. So they kept me overnight for a migraine. And then they came in and they said, oh, well, we have to just do these quick tests on you to make sure that you can go home. I was like, hold on a second. I just had a migraine. Like I didn't have a stroke. I didn't have anything. So this physical therapist and occupational therapist came in for 10 minutes, literally 10 minutes. They had me put on my socks, walk down the hall, and brush my teeth. Do you know how much it cost me for those 10 minutes?
$1,700.
$4,200 for 10 minutes. They actually billed me 6 different visits for 10 minutes. Right. And so, I, as a patient, looked at that and I was like, this is bullshit. Like, how the hell are you going to charge me, 6? And the vast majority of that time, that physical therapist was talking to my wife about what was going on in the world. Like they weren't even paying attention. So we have this disconnect between who pays for healthcare and who's actually receiving healthcare. And most of the fraud happens within that relationship where they say they're providing you a bunch of stuff, but I don't care, right? I'm not paying for it, right? And so that's where the big disconnect comes in our society. And when you're not paying for something, you don't care. You don't care what the bill is. The insurance company does. And in essence, and sorry to go on a quick tangent here, but what people don't understand is health insurance companies actually make more money when you are sick. So that was an Obamacare law that basically said the health insurance plan can only make 15% of premium. So if you're paying a premium of $1,000, then they can only make $150 on that. So how do they grow their revenue or their profits by 10% to $165? Well, they want your premiums to go up. They want it to go from $1,000 to $1,100. So we have the buyers of healthcare, which are these health plans, and the sellers of healthcare, which are these big hospital systems. They both want the price to go up. And so guess what? That's why we have 2,500% growth in healthcare prices over the last 40 years, 50 years, is because both parties in that transaction want the price to go up. You don't need to have a PhD in economics to figure out what happens when the buyer and the seller of a product want the price to go up.
I almost need a second to absorb that, because I would think, because if you're an insurance company, I would think the profits are, you would almost want people to be healthy, like as a theoretical. Let's say I was insuring people and I charged them all, I don't know, let's just say 10 grand a year. I got 10 customers and I'm charging them 10 grand a year. I would think I want to invest in their health, because if I can keep them all healthy and none of them get sick and I don't have to actually pay any of that out, that's all my profits. So I would think
you're maximized. You're maximized at 15% of what you charge them.
Right. So you have no incentive for people to be healthier and get less care. You want everyone to go and get more care so that you can keep moving up the piece. It's almost like you're a hedge fund that doesn't need to make money, because your money's just in the management fee, and you're guaranteed a customer base because the government, states who is and who can or cannot provide care. So yeah, that's so interesting. Your entire
and the more
game,
assets under management you have as a hedge fund, you get that 2%, the more fees that you're getting.
Right.
So
and
what happens?
And imagine if you couldn't make money, you didn't lose your customers if you lose money, and you don't make more money if you make money. So you just need to get more people into the hedge fund. And that's essentially what healthcare is. That's wild.
Exactly. And you're screwed twice, because they want the long-term price of healthcare to go up so they make more money. But then in the year, remember, they can only make 15% of your premium as profits, which means that 85% has to go to medical expenses. So what starts happening is that if it becomes 86, 87, 88% of your premium, that's 2, 3, 4% that they're missing out on. And so they actually have a system, and I have to say allegedly, because there's still a lawsuit around this, where they actually dial up the number of denials or the ability for doctors to get pre-authorizations. They make it harder for the doctors to get a pre-authorization, which means they basically decline your bill if their medical costs exceed 85%. So they're trying to maximize their profit during the year, but they also want the long-term price to go up so they can maximize prices.
It's like the opposite of cops going for tickets at the end of the month. It's like, don't try and get coverage in November and December, because they've run through their budget.
Yeah, they're looking at that. They're going to dial it up, how many denials they have, and how hard it is for your doctor to actually get approval to do some of these procedures.
So some of the big
problems. By the way, this is all Obamacare stuff. Like, this is all, like, most of this is Obamacare related. So 10, 11, I guess it's 12 years ago now. Obamacare put in some of these things, and it makes sense for people who don't understand economics to be like, yeah, of course we don't health insurance plans to like screw us. But in essence, what they did is they made a cost plus system, which is, we've seen in the military. If you have a cost plus system, you want the costs to go up over time so that your profits, your plus, can go up over time. So that's why we're seeing this exact same thing happen in the military industrial complex, and seeing us paying. I think DOGE just came out with something that was like, we're paying $1,000 for a toilet paper dispenser or something. And so that's why this happens.
If you did polling 12 years ago pre-Obamacare, were most people happier with the healthcare system?
Happier, yes, for sure. They just came out with...
And by the way, just to break down why that's so wild, if you think about how much technology should have advanced over the last 13 years and how much better healthcare should be now 13 years later with technological advancements, it all should be cheaper. It should be less invasive. Just think about how much better all technology's gotten. Like, even this podcast board, you know what I would have needed in the past? to have this much technology in front of me 12 years ago, I'd have to be in a radio station that had like $100,000 worth of equipment. But I'll let you take it from there in just terms of how much satisfaction with healthcare has changed since Obamacare.
Yeah, I mean, and really quickly on that, where you would have thought technology would have helped. So another thing with Obamacare is they forced everybody to be on these electronic medical records, which has increased the doctor's time, administrative time, from about 5 hours a week to 15 and a half hours a week. So now the doctors are spending a full day of their week doing administrative tasks to satisfy all the government regulations and the health insurance regulations to get all the data into these electronic medical records. And so you can imagine just, 15 hours of your week total being spent on just getting paid as opposed to actually providing care. So why did doctors go up 150% versus the population going up 50%? One, we're way less healthy, so we just need more doctors to take care of people. But two, it's this administrative component of this that is required under Obamacare. And now we're seeing doctor burnout at an all-time high, not an all-time high. It was all-time high with COVID. It has come down a little bit, but about 50% of doctors have indicated they're in burnout because of all these administrative tasks that they have to do, as opposed to taking care of, me and you. I have, between me and my doctor, I've got my employer, I've got the government, I have the insurance company, that all have to make decisions before a doctor can actually provide me care. Whereas if I can go in and pay in cash, like, hey, doc, I'm just going to pay you a couple $100 or whatever for this service, it's now directly between you and your doctor. You don't have to worry about any of these other entities getting in the way of your healthcare. And in terms of the patient perspective, it has gotten severely less, palatable, the healthcare system. And in fact, I think it was last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, there was a survey that said the most hated industries in the United States. Number one, I didn't even know this was an industry, but they included it. As you could probably expect, government was number one. Number two was health insurance companies. Number three was pharmaceutical companies. So, we are seeing kind of an uproar here over the healthcare system. And, it's the whole reason I started my company, Crowd Health. But I think the percentage of patients who are pissed off is at an all-time high right now.
All right, so now let's actually talk Crowd Health here. It's funny. Other than my rent, my health insurance bill was my biggest bill for the last, let's say, 5 years. Because I'm a W-9 employee, I've been purchasing my own healthcare coverage. What I did is I went to the Connecticut state, and I tried to. It used to be, by the way, pre-Obamacare, I remember having a catastrophic care plan. I think it cost me $100 a month. It covered me if I had, it paid out like $1 million or something if you had cancer. And I figured at the time I was like a healthy 25-year-old, 26-year-old, or no, that's not accurate. When I got off my parents' insurance, it was at age 27. Catastrophic care plan still existed. And it cost me, maybe it was $100 a quarter. It was not very expensive. And the idea was I had no healthcare coverage, but if I had cancer, I had this. They got rid of those. And then the cheapest insurance that I could possibly purchase, I think I want to say, is like $675 a month, which is the ultra high deductible bronze plan. It covers nothing essentially until I've paid out of pocket. I'm going to say it's $7,500 a year, which I never do. So now I've carried this plan for 5 years. I've spent $6,000 or $7,000 a year on the plan, and I've not seen a doctor once. And it's in part because even when I've tried to see a doctor, I've literally called them up and been like, who can I go to in my area as a primary care physician? And then they send me a document that's not primary care physician so that I can cold call through it. And then I try and go to ZocDoc, and then ZocDoc makes you certify that you were pre-approved by your insurance. That's not a thing. I tried having that conversation with it's literally not a thing. And it just becomes a way, I've just found I'm paying too much money on this thing for something that, A, I don't use at all. I'm perfectly healthy. And I have this because, life is life. You can find out tomorrow you have cancer, and you don't want to have that financial burden. That's why if you're a young individual, and that's also why Obama fleeced us all and forced us into the traditional healthcare, not to be able to get the catastrophic plans, because that's how they had to offset the cost when they got rid of the pre-existing conditions. Anyways, back to me actually seeing a doctor now that I'm a member of Crowd Health. How do I go about it? Is this a simpler system? Do I pay cash and get reimbursed? Do I call you guys up? How does it actually work? I'd like to get some blood work and find out whether or not I have diabetes.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about Crowd Health is you have a care advocate internally who is yours. You talk to that same person every time. One of the problems I had with health insurance when I was, before Crowd Health is I had a fairly large health event with one of my kids, and I was sent to somewhere in India to talk about, this issue, and they couldn't figure it out.
That's
So they
crazy.
talked, they shot me to somebody in Bangladesh, and then I couldn't talk to I'm like, holy crap, I just want to talk to a human being who can actually help me through my medical event. And so, you have somebody internally at Crowd Health. You can call them anytime. We had just this morning, I posted something on X where this woman needed a heart MRI. And so she went to her local hospital, and they said it was going to be $5,600 for a heart MRI. She called our care advocate, and she's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And she's like, great, there's one down the street that will do it for $443. So like literally a mile away from the hospital, you're getting a 95% discount just because you're going and you're paying directly in cash, as opposed to having the doctor or the radiology group, whatever it ends up being, go through all of these shenanigans to actually get paid. And so in essence, what we're doing is we're ripping out all the administrative middlemen. You can pay your doctor directly. And if there's a bill above $500, then you can submit that to the community, and the community will fund that for you so that you have, whatever it ends up being. But I'll give you a specific example. We had a guy talking about just shit happens, right? We had a guy who was in Montana. He was fishing. He was in bear country. He had a 44 around his chest. So he catches a fish. He's reeling it in. He leans down to get the fish. The 44 falls out of his holster. The hammer hits a rock. It shoots him. It goes into his calf, out the back of his calf, into his thigh, out the top of his thigh, into his chest, and out the back. So one bullet, six wounds. He was medevaced out from the creek. He was, in a coma for multiple days. He went to sepsis for several weeks. This is approaching $1 million bill. He pays the first $500 of that. We negotiate that bill down for him. We have a team of attorneys who will negotiate it for you. And we got it down to about $200,000. We sent that to a community of now 10,000 people that funded that bill. And so now he can pay the hospital directly. So we took a nearly $1 million bill, negotiated it down to 200,000. And this community of people are helping you out to pay this bill. So if you're a member of Crowd Health, we'll ask you once a month to help somebody else out in the community. And you can say yes or no to that. But if you say yes, then your whatever it is, $100 goes from your payment method to their bank account. And at the end of the day, they have enough money then to go and pay the hospital. And so you might be like, okay, so why would somebody voluntarily help me, especially if it's for like a broken finger or something that's not like a heart tugger? Well, here's the cool part of this is if you request something from the community will know the last 10 times that you were asked, did you say yes, 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 or did you say no, 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 no? And so if you've been a really good member of the community, 100% of the time, those bills have gotten funded. But if you don't want to help anybody else out in the community, then the community is going to be like, dude, like you're not helping anybody else out. Like, why would we help you out? And so we've built this community of people that, are willing to help. And we've done this now for about 20,000 bills over the last 3 years. Everything from, $1 million gunshot wounds to, little pediatric visits of $150. So it's worked beautifully. And the price is, you said you're paying $600 as an individual, you'll pay, max of $190 per month. So we're reducing people's monthly payment by 50 to 60%.
And then that $190 a month, is that what I then go in and I can allocate to contribute, or when you're funding through the voluntary exchange, that's on top of whatever your monthly initial contribution is?
Yeah, you'll pay me $55 a month, and then it's up to $140 you can help somebody else out in the community with. So it's going to be just a total of I guess it was $195 a month total. That's the max we will ever ask you. We're not asking you for any more than that. And in fact, I keep saying max because the amount that we ask you each month to help another person is maxed out at that $140. But for example, in February, we're only asking for 80 of the 140 because as opposed to health insurance plans who make, more money if they start declining these bills, you make the money because there's not enough bills in the system to allocate to that full 140. So we're only asking
you're
you
playing
for
a different
80.
game because you want more members. Because
Exactly.
basically,
And
and the more money that you can save people, and the more you can grow your membership, the more you're just making a membership fee, and it's a different business model, which means that you're actually more in line with the people purchasing it.
Incentives, from my perspective, are everything. Incentives are everything. And so we wanted to have our incentives completely aligned with the community, which means we want to get these bills down as low as possible. It's a lower price for the community. We can get more people in to pay that $55 a month that comes to us. And we, the more people that come in, the more people we can allocate, those really big bills. And so it benefits the community. And so the incentives are completely aligned with us and our community members, whereas the incentives for the health insurance companies are completely perverse.
There you go. Well, Andy, I appreciate having you on. I will report back once I finally see a doctor, which I haven't done in years, and we'll find out how many contributions I'm looking for as I beg from the community. But no, I think I'll be all right. And
you'll be good.
Other than that, the next time we got crazy healthcare stories, I hope you'll come on and share some of your expertise and insights with us.
I'd love it. JoinCrowdHealth.com if anybody is interested in joining us.
There you go. Catch you later. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, brother.
All right, and now we've still got more news. We covered all the big topics, and now we'll do some quick takes, shooting from the hip. First is, I love this. This was exactly what I was talking about, of the people that got banned from covering within the White House. Hey, J.D. Vance, I know you're busy lecturing the Europeans on free speech, but have you seen this? And the line was from Mark Caputo: President Trump's decision to limit AP's reporter access is as much fight over the Gulf of America as it is a protest of White House, blah, blah, blah. And I just love this from J.D. Vance. Yes, dummy. I think there's a difference between not giving a reporter a seat in the White House press briefing room and jailing people for dissenting views. The latter is a threat to free speech. The former is not. Hope that helps. And I love the just, hey, dummy. I love that. I like, Trump's rubbing off on J.D. Vance, and J.D. Vance is getting spicy as well. All right. Here was Kamala Harris. And if there's one thing to learn from the latest Kamala Harris word salad, is that you'll notice her Dougie behind her going, amen, you say it, sister, you go, girl, which is why, ladies, you got to be careful being around yes men, because you can have some guy behind you damn girling you all the way into thinking you should be running for president, even though you're the world's biggest idiot. So maybe you got no self-esteem and you need someone who will blow a little bit of smoke up your ass. But I'm just saying, if you were moderately attractive and you found some giant nerd and he blows all the smoke up your ass, you might need to find someone who will also take you down a peg, because if not, you might end up in the Kamala Harris situation where the entire country's laughing at you and you don't understand the disconnect because you spent your whole life there with your Dougie blowing smoke up your ass. Roll the tape.
When we think about like these moments where we see things that are being taken, but also let's see it as nature abhors a vacuum. So where there's a vacancy, then let's fill it, right? Mm-hmm. And let's know that the reality is that the progress of our nation has always been about the expansion of rights, not the restriction of rights. Mm-hmm. We're seeing a U-turn right now. Mm-hmm. For those rights to be maintained, which means we have to be vigilant, and it's just the nature of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, look it's this beautiful play and everything that we know he was suppressed. He had to suppress so much, but he knew, and he took those risks. But we have to be clear-eyed. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean we don't see the beauty in everything, right? Mm-hmm. These things all coexist. Mm-hmm. But I believe we fight for something, not.
If you want to know why Kamala Harris ended up that way, it's because she drinks and her Dougie just stands behind. Mm-hmm. You know it. All right, what do we got here? I'm going to call it an episode shortly.
We tend to think.
We'll cover that in another one. SNAP benefits may exclude junk food under new policy. We'll cover it. Well, we'll come back to all this. That whole rant about drinking more. Oh, here, we'll close it out with Bill Gates talking.
What do you make of RFK and vaccines and what he's saying about it and the position he's been given in this incoming administration?
Well, he wrote a book saying that Tony Fauci and I kill millions of children and make billions of dollars with vaccines. And, people can judge for themselves whether that's correct or not.
How is that guy this rich, and who on his team lets him talk to the media? That's the best defense you have for yourself. We'll let you read it, and maybe you can come to your own conclusion. You can figure that one out. All right, let's read one more. I want to read one more, and then I'll take some comments. 4 New York City officials plan to resign over Mayor Eric Adams. No, we're done. I wanted to say now they're all of a sudden they're excited about the corruption of a court case going away because the Donald Trump administration will throw it out because he will cooperate. But do they ever care or report about whether or not it was a nonsense? It's just a given that it was an honest court case when the court case was brought. And now it's being thrown out, and that's the fraud. But there's no consideration that maybe the court case was brought fraudulently because he stopped playing ball and started just telling people the truth that, hey, we can't have everyone just coming across our border. All right, that is our episode. Thank you for hanging out. I got a lot of leftover things here, so maybe we'll do another episode this week, but I'm leaning towards another one next week because I am off to Houston, Texas tomorrow. Let's take some comments. Frank Stone Analysis. What do you make of AIs eliminating all the elites through day of death prediction lotteries on the emerging decentralized encrypted networks? I think you need to leave your house. I don't know what you're talking about, and some snooper nerd smarter than me might actually have an answer for you on that. Frank Stone Analysis. I give out Snickers to Wookiees because sugar poisoning is legal. All right. Runaway Slav, eating healthy, daily exercise, and not doing dumb stuff has been my health insurance since 26 years old. Not bad. And then Junior, I'm going to the Friday Night Houston with my Prosecute Fauci t-shirt. There you go. And you guys can get your Prosecute Fauci t-shirts at robbernsteinmerch.com. Junior, tell people how much you like your Prosecute Fauci t-shirt before we call an episode. We'll wait for your testimonial.